with the leadership system, I want to talk about some things that we can do to really streamline and create an environment where we're not always having to be available in order for business to run smoothly. And so one of the first things I want to talk about is your calendar. Now, as I mentioned to you before, the things that I'm going to talk to you about, they can be used to run your business smoothly, but if you really think about it, they can also be used to run your life. And so particularly if you're a solopreneur, if you're a small business owner, what you're going to find a lot of times, especially if you work from home, what you're going to find a lot of times is that your personal life and your business life intersect. And so as I talk about some of these things, particularly things like your calendar and your to-do list and that sort of thing, you might want to think about, okay, how can I use this effectively in my life in general? With a calendar, do you have a calendar system? I want to talk to you a little bit about how you may want to consider managing your calendar. Let's start with planning. You can begin by scheduling things on your calendar annually, monthly, weekly, or daily. What I would do is sit down and decide that there's going to be a certain amount of time on my calendar on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or an annual basis where I am going to do some planning. So what you want to do is you want to use this time to take a look at the big picture and do some goal setting. You want to schedule some me time on your calendar so that you are able to plan out your week. And you want to spend some time on Sunday evenings, for example, and use that to review what you're going to be focusing on for the next morning for that week. And so planning can take place on a variety of levels. If you're planning daily activities, you may want to look at your calendar first thing in the morning. If you're planning your weekly activities, you may want to look at your calendar Sunday before your work week gets started. If you're planning monthly activities, you may want to decide either the first day of the month, the last day of the previous month when you're going to do your planning. Or if you're going to do something on an annual basis, you may want to do that right at the end of the previous year so that you're ready to go for that next year. Now, the other thing is on an annual basis, you can put things on your calendar that you know are going to happen annually. Maybe in your fourth quarter, you might want to start putting things on your calendar for the following year. So you want to take a look at things that happen every single year, things like meetings or conferences that you know are going to happen on an annual basis. Maybe even if you collect and track customers' anniversaries or birthdays or important key things like that. If you attend conferences or things in your industry, add those to your calendar as well. But what you want to do here is go through your calendar and just go ahead and put down things, even if it's well into the future, that you know are going to come up. That way you go ahead and block out those times. And then look at some of the things that are recurring. So there's some things that you know that you do all the time. A lot of times we will rely on our memories to say, okay, I know I go to Toastmasters every Thursday at noon, so we don't put it on the calendar because we know that's a standing appointment. But the problem is, as we start to fill up our calendar with a lot of other activities, what ends up happening is we start double booking ourselves. So be careful to not double book the calendar. And then what about travel? Are there times when you're going to be on vacation or business travel or anything like that? Make sure that you put those on your calendar as well. And then you have to account for travel time. So if you're going to be flying, you need to be at the airport at 7 o'clock in the morning, even though your flight is not till 9 or 10 o'clock, you can't schedule an appointment during a time when you're not available. So block out those kinds of things on your calendar as well. Make sure you also block out personal things on your calendar. Even though we have these business calendars and it's all about customer appointments and making sure we handle business, there are lots of times when some of the personal things that we need to take care of have to be done during our work days. So we want to make sure we put those on the calendar as well. Important dates and events that are personal need to go on our calendar. I don't recommend that we manage two separate calendars. You really want to be able to see everything that you're working on all at one glance. And then action items. Schedule your action items from your to-do list. And we're going to talk about the to-do list a little bit. But if there are action items that are on your to-do list, you want to schedule those. You want to be flexible, though. If and when something does fall through the cracks, just reschedule it. Don't beat yourself up. Just go ahead. If you can, reschedule it and move on. If you're using an electronic calendar, it's really easy to make these adjustments. And if you're using a paper calendar, I would recommend that maybe some of the annual things that you're working on, you can put those in pen because they're not likely to change, like anniversaries and birthdays and conferences and things like that. They're not likely to change, so putting them in pen is fine. But the majority of the things that you're going to put on your calendar, you really want to put them in pencil because that enables you to erase and move it around and that sort of thing. If you're using a paper-based calendar, go ahead and block out time where you'll be able to implement some of these things that I'm talking about. As I said before, don't ever rely on your memory to do your calendar. You really want to put it in writing. That way, you know that if it's on the calendar, it's something that needs to be done. And if it's not on the calendar, it just doesn't exist. Use your calendar. Make it a sacred thing. Don't let people interfere with your calendar. Once it's on the calendar, that's a commitment that you've made to yourself. What I want to encourage you to do, and I don't know if you want to use an electronic calendar either on a computer or a smartphone, or you want to use a paper calendar. I actually have both. And one of the reasons that I like the paper calendar is because it allows you to really, at a glance, do some time blocking. So if you sit down on Sunday night, for example, you can carve out 90-minute blocks of time that you may want to use for working on your business. You might want to take 90 minutes or even 30 minutes a day, carve that out on your calendar, make it a sacred time where you will not be interrupted, where no one will distract you, and use that time for working on one of these systems that we're going to be talking about today. Early in the process, as you're building your business, the more you create a system, the more that you systemize things, the better and easier it will be as you start to build and expand. I want to talk to you a little bit about your to-do list at this point. Now, a to-do list is obviously an organized list where you're going to be adding action items, things that you really want to focus on. You can get organized with a very simple to-do list. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be anything that you spend money on or anything like that. It doesn't even have to be computerized, but, of course, it does make it easier. There are lots of applications on smartphones and things like that now that you can use to do a simple to-do list. It may ease your overwhelm to scratch down on a list anything that's in your head that needs to be done. What ends up happening is you create these huge lists that just looking at them after a while you get overwhelmed because it's like there's no way that you could really do that. So I want to talk to you tonight about how you can get organized with a simple to-do list of action items that you just basically check off. You can use it as a planning tool. And the way you do that is by putting things on your to-do list that are very small, actionable items, things that are based upon what you need to do next to take the project or move the project forward. Your to-do list is basically an evolving tool, and it enables you to focus your efforts on your priorities. So you don't really want to put everything on your to-do list. You can get another document or another list or something else where you jot down some ideas for things that you need to work on, and maybe ultimately those things move to your to-do list. But your to-do list should be bite-sized, actionable items that you can do in one sitting. I would recommend that if you can't get it done in one sitting, then it shouldn't be on the to-do list. You might want to take a look at it and say, okay, this is a project, and I need to break it down even further. So when you manage your list, you want to make sure that the items on there are ones that need to be on there, and there are going to be some items that probably aren't supposed to be on there. You want to take those items off your to-do list. The items on your to-do list, they should move you towards your primary goal. Also, you should make sure that you're the right person to be doing that task. So only the tasks that require your attention should be on your to-do list. And other actions should either be delegated or eliminated. Now, you could break down your to-do list in these really small bites. So you make sure that each item on your to-do list can be done just in that sitting. So when you're making blocks of time on your calendar and you block out some time to work on your to-do list, you want to make sure that the activity that you're going to be doing during that block of time on your calendar is something that you can complete, because you really want to get that sense of accomplishment. Avoid the mistake of putting projects on your to-do list. I think a lot of times we do things like plan birthday parties. Well, planning birthday party is actually not a to-do list item, because if you think about planning a birthday party, it's going to take you several subcategories of tasks that you will need to do, like get a location, order the cake, get the DJ. All of those things are individual things, and even some of those things may be broken down even further. So think about your to-do list as items that you can get done in one sitting. You want to make sure that you complete that item before you go on. And we put something on the list, and we keep it on the list, and we keep it on the list, and then after a while, it just kind of becomes demoralizing, because we look at our list and there's no movement, and there's no growth, and there's no change. In terms of your to-do list, you want to make the things on your to-do list actionable, right? So you need to make sure that some physical action needs to be done. So instead of using keywords to jog your memory, use full sentences that have verbs. So in other words, instead of saying cleaners, you might want to say take suit to the cleaners, because that way you are very specific in what needs to be done, and it's not just a keyword that you're placing on there. Another example might be, instead of saying social media, you might want to be very specific and say schedule a blog post in my social media scheduler. So you're really being very, very specific about what it is that you're putting on that task, and you know that if you cross that task off, it's done. If you just use social media, for example, you might leave that on your to-do list for quite some time, because after you do the blog post, you might need to do Facebook, you might need to do newsletters, and there's so many things that you need to do in order to get that big topic done. And then live in the now. Make everything current. Include things on your checklist that are current. What do you need to work on now? What do you need to do to move the project that you're working on forward? Focus on that thing before you move on to the next thing. And be careful not to stack up your to-do list with a whole bunch of future-oriented tasks. While it's important for you to have a place to record the action items, you don't want to put them on your to-do list. You want to create another place for that, maybe a parking lot, so that you can park the items that you're not planning to focus on immediately, and then you put all your action items on your to-do list so that you don't get bogged down. Then you want to prune your list. You want to manage your list by pruning it regularly. Review for dead items, or maybe completed items, or even items that you ruled out, the items that you're not going to be working on anymore. Before you add any new items to your to-do list, you want to evaluate them to make sure they really, really belong there. And make sure that you are the right person to do that task. A lot of times, we put things on our to-do list only to find out that they really don't belong there, that they really should be delegated to somebody else, or sometimes they're not even an efficient use of our time, so they shouldn't be on our list at all. And then make a commitment. Whenever you put any item on your to-do list, you are making a commitment that you are going to get it done. You have to get to the point where you are a person of your word. And so pay particular attention to the items that seem to stay on your list week after week, month after month. What is the reason that you keep avoiding them? And if there's a reason and you figure out what that reason is, then do something to overcome that procrastination. Replace the intimidating and scary items with something that's more manageable or something that's actionable. You want to make sure it's related to the item so that you can move the process forward. Maybe it's something that you need to break down into even smaller bite-sized pieces. And then prioritize. Get momentum by ticking off easy items first. So if you have several items that you can really knock out in a minute or two, go ahead and do those, because it really kind of sets the momentum for the day. And then we talked about delegating. Make it a practice to look at your list and find someone that you can delegate to A lot of times when we work by ourselves or when we're in business by ourselves, we don't have anybody to delegate to. This is where you may want to consider hiring a virtual assistant or bringing on a part-time administrative assistant, or maybe working with somebody else who can help support you with some of these things. The other thing I want to share with you is about planning. Strategic planning is the process of addressing where you are, what you have to work with, where you want to be, and how you plan to get there. So in order to do strategic planning, we have to take a look at our current situation. And that means taking a historical view of the changes or the growth that has taken place in your business or your organization, and this is going to help you to analyze where you are. We talked about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and this is what we do. We take a look at what are our strengths? What are some of the things that we still need to work on, our weaknesses? What about our opportunities? What do we have out there that we can go after? And what are some of our threats? What are some of the challenges that we're facing, or some of the things that are going to cause us to have problems or challenges in our work? So we want to analyze these to determine how we can capitalize on our strengths and opportunities while we mitigate our weaknesses and our threats. Another thing we want to look at is the vision. This is the focus that we have for articulating the question, where do you want to be? Where do I really want to be? Our vision is based upon shared values. So if we're working with other people within our organization, our vision is going to be based upon shared values with them, and also shared values with the clients or the customers that we interact with. It's important that we ensure that all the key players who have a stake in achieving the vision are involved. So the vision becomes the mission statement for your company. The other thing is to articulate your goals, SMART short-term goals as well as SMART long-term goals. And SMART is the acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So these goals should be aligned to your vision. You should put them in writing, and you need to share them and articulate them with trusted parties. Goals are your intended future state. A strategic action, this is the actions that you are going to take that are in alignment with your vision and your goals. So where have you been successful? You want to repeat those activities, and where you've had failures, you want to look at that for lessons learned, but you want to make sure you find out the root cause so that you can address them. And then measurement. You want to create a dashboard that tracks all of your key performance indicators so that you'll be able to identify where to put your attention. When you use a simple spreadsheet, you can create charts that contain relevant information. So you really want to track where are you with your vision, how are you doing with your goals, what about your actions? You say these are things that you're going to be doing, strategic steps that you're going to be taking, or you staying true to the commitments that you have made. And then there is communications. Your communication system involves things like your objectives, your goal, your audience, your timetable, your tools, and the evaluation that you're going to use. And I'm going to go through these rather quickly because I want to be very conscious of the time that we have here together. I'm going to go through any of these in details, but what I really want you to do is take an opportunity to download the client workbook, and I want you to download the audio as well so that you'll be able to get a good feel of this information. And so in terms of communication, this is everything that has to do with written or verbal communication, especially in this day and age. We're doing a lot of digital or electronic communication. So all of those things work together to form communication systems. So what objectives do you have for accomplishing your communications? What are your goals that you're going to have that are aligned with your objectives? So we talked about that already, SMART goals. What are your goals? Your audience, who is it that you're trying to address your communications to? So it's really important that you know who they are so you can provide effective communication that meets or addresses their needs. What's your timetable? When are you going to accomplish your objectives? This will guide you to figure out what kind of effort is required or what kind of additional support you may need in order to accomplish your goal. What about tools? Everything that you say or send communicates a message. So which tools are you going to use to get your message out? There are many kinds of tools. There are printed publications, there's social media, there are all kinds of marketing tools, even voicemail. Even your outgoing messages communicate a feel or communicate a message to the people that are receiving that communication. Other things like surveys and reports and signages and speeches that you give, even your receipts and invoices communicate a message when you send them out, particularly to your customers. What about evaluation? How are you going to measure the results of your communication? What kinds of things are you going to do? If you're selling a product or service, you may be able to quantify the results by whether or not people make purchases. I want to move on to time management. There are all kinds of ways to manage your time, and one of the best ways, I think, is to manage your priorities. In order to have good time management skills, you have to really start with figuring out what your priorities are. Once you know what your key area of focus is, then you can start to make some choices on how you're going to spend your time. And so in the client workbook, you're going to see a chart there that really talks about some areas of life, and I'm talking specifically about all the areas of your life because I think that impacts how you do business as well. And so if you look at the home, career, spiritual, personal, self-care, relationships, recreation, and fun, and maybe some others that you may want to think of, look at those categories in the workbook. I want you to go in and write down what are your top 3 priorities. These priorities in each one of these categories should spring to mind right away. You know what's important to you, so you should be able to fill that out. Then what are your daily actions? What are things that you're going to do that are on a daily basis that are aligned to your priorities, and how are you going to incorporate these into your life? These actions should be results-focused. And if you can't get results by the end of the day, put that activity on another day. At the end of the day, you need to know that you've accomplished something. So if you have a priority on this list and you put it down, make sure that you really can get it accomplished. Prioritize your activities. While it's true that you need to take action on urgent and important items, you also want to ensure that you don't become overwhelmed by crises. So you really want to be able to prioritize activities. Include important but not urgent activities on your schedule as well. So these would be those items that you want to schedule. So you have, when you're looking at your priorities, you have things that are urgent and important. You have to do those right away. But if you fill your calendar with nothing but those kind of activities, you're going to get burnt out. What you also need to do is put some items on there that are important but maybe not urgent. That way you want to just plan some things out and get those things knocked out when you're not under a lot of stress and pressure. Track your time. Keep track of how much time you're spending on particular activities and break up the amount of time that you're spending on each system. And this will enable you to develop a balanced business. And then put yourself on your calendar. A lot of times people don't do this. They have a calendar and they have all these activities that they have to do and all these business things that they have to do, but they don't put themselves on the calendar. And so when you actually write an appointment for yourself on the calendar and honor it, you will make sure that you have this uninterrupted time where you can focus on maybe some challenging project that you have, or focus on rejuvenating your strength so that you be more productive later on. And then categorize the things that you put on your calendar. You might want to categorize into short and long term. You can separate things by daily, weekly, or annual activities. You can identify things that need to be worked on for the following day. You can use weekly sheets so you can view your short-term activities that you must complete before the week is over. You might use an annual sheet to look at some of your longer-term projects and goals, or you might use a 5-year sheet, which will give you an overview of the big picture. Once you categorize things, they need to be interrelated. I want to talk to you a little bit about goal setting. When we talk about goal setting, we want to put together a goal-setting system that's basically easy to understand and to use. And if the system isn't simple, it's going to be frustrating, and anytime we get frustrated with something, we tend to quickly abandon it. So the system should provide step-by-step procedures that are both flexible and personalizable. And so with a system, you need to focus on one step at a time. If you focus on the end result of the big picture, you can end up feeling overwhelmed and ineffective. Now, we do need to have that high-level view, but in terms of your goal setting, you want to really focus on the things that you can accomplish. You want to make sure that you have clarity. So you want to start with really clear goals, and you want them to be realistic. You want to have realistic milestones. And you want to state specifically how you're going to attain each one of those milestones. Then you want to be persistent. This is one of the most important things I think about goal setting is that we have to stay true to the goal no matter what it looks like. A lot of times we get frustrated because obstacles come our way, there are challenges, there are all kinds of things that try to stop us from achieving our goals. But what you have to do is include contingencies. You need to figure out how you can consistently move towards your goal and find ways to deal with those obstacles and those challenges. And then you want to banish negativity and naysayers. And this is always a huge one. Whenever I'm coaching people, this comes up a lot because what happens is there are people out there who are going to try to stop you from achieving your goal and going after your mission. Most of the people who offer critique and sound advice, they really mean well. But if you listen to them, you'll go off course. And a lot of times these very people are afraid to do what they've been called to do, so they will stop you from doing what you're called to do. And also, they may even fear losing your attention, your love, or your time. So they don't want you to change because it means that they're going to lose something. So you can't afford to let their fears, or yours for that matter, stand in the way of your success. The other thing you want to do in terms of goal setting is to use your journal. Make a list of all the things that you want to accomplish, and don't think about it too hard. Just start brainstorming on paper. Keep everything flowing very easily. Don't get bogged down by just keep writing. If you fill up several pages writing, that's okay. One of the things that I did and I encourage you to do is write a list of your 100 things that you want to do. I wrote this list several years ago, and I still have the list. And occasionally I'll go and I'll look at it, and I'll just say, wow, some of these things have actually been accomplished. And so you'll find that you put your 100 goals down on paper and just don't judge them. Don't try to streamline them. Just go ahead and put it on paper. And then in the client workbook, I really want you to do this exercise where you take your short-term goals, those are your goals that you're going to complete within the year, your midterm goals, those are 3 to 5 years out, and your long-term goals, and pick your top 5 from your 100 list that you completed. So you're going to start with 100 things that you want to do. Just allow yourself to easily and seamlessly brainstorm those 100 things. And then from that list, I want you to go in and pick your 5 short-term ones, then your 5 midterm ones, and then your 5 long-term ones. And those are going to be the things that you really put your primary focus on.